5-year extension. What can you tell us about where the lease stands now?
Yeah, in a statement that Governor Moore and I put out jointly on the same day that the governor did his State of the State address, I think speaks volumes. I have no doubt that we will relatively rapidly move towards the renewal of the public-private partnership full length. And I would be very disappointed if I'm not able to work with the governor and his team, who, as you know, he just appointed people on Friday, new board members, a new chairman, to make that happen in the next 6 months, sooner. I mean, I'd love to have that as an all-star great gift for everybody really in the community. There's just no there other than we're going to get that done, and that's always been one of the things I committed to. And I'll, I have no intention of not seeing that happen. I know the governor and his folks are just as keen on it as we are.
Do you have a previous relationship with the new chairman? Yeah, I know you had a relationship with Kelso, but did you have a previous relationship
with Craig? I don't. I'm just getting to know Craig, and he's got a really impressive background. We have spoken once, but that's about it. And they're looking forward to working together.
How comforting is it to have Nathaniel's legal situation resolved?
I think those things are distractions, and it's unfortunate whenever they arise. But all good things going forward now, and I'm really confident what Mike and Brandon are doing, what the management team's doing, and I think those things are as they should be in the rearview mirror and proceeding.
How long is Mike under contract here?
So I think you guys have asked Mike that a couple times, and he has, I think, declined to say, this is an entertainment, a community activity, it's sports, it's media, it's supposed to be fun and a distraction. A lot of companies don't talk about their human resources issues in their employment contracts. I will tell you guys this. I'm here for the long haul. Mike is here for the long haul. Brandon's here for the long haul. We are all fully vested. We're not going anywhere, and nobody's a short timer. Nobody is expiring in a year or 2 years or anything like that. I hope you guys respect it. It's just not great policy for me to talk about people's personal relationships, but we're all here under contract long term.
John, what is the reason that the lease agreement has taken this long?
Well, first of all, if you back up a little bit from it and think about I would just suggest that we think about it as a community development of an economic potential, a public-private partnership. That's what it really is. A lease, right, is a very narrow part of that public-private partnership. You've got the public part where the state and the locality invest public dollars. You've got the Orioles investing private dollars. You hopefully will have a commercial real estate development on Camden Yards, as the outgoing Chairman Tom Kelso has talked about publicly and testified. Live, work, play, 365. That's going to be a huge step forward for the next iteration of Camden Yards. So all of that is part of it. The actual facility use agreement, renewing a 30-year-old document, is that's really a minor sidelight. So I think if to the extent it's taken long, and I don't think it's taken long. I mean, I think it's been a great 30 years where we've driven 75 million people, and the Ravens have generated another 20 million. When you get 100 million visitors out of a 30-year relationship, well, I don't know if that's taken too long. I think you should be deliberate and thoughtful. And quite frankly, we had an outgoing administration with great Governor Hogan and all of his people, but you had an incoming governor-elect, and I loved working with Governor Hogan and Tom Kelso, but, I'm really looking forward to working with the next administration, with Governor Moore. And I wanted to interface fully with the new governor, with his administration, with his new chairman, and the new board that's being appointed. As you guys know, the board's being expanded. So now the Senate president has an appointee, Speaker of the House has an appointee, the governor, Mayor Scott has an appointee. We should do that transparently. We should do that communicatively. I didn't think it would be right to rush something through in the final days of the Hogan administration.
John, when Mike mentioned liftoff And he was talking about the team being ready out of contend. And some people interpret that as also payroll, which he explained later. And is there anything you're able to share about the budget itself, the comfort zone, when it might be more lift off for that area?
Yeah, I would say this, we committed, as you guys know, in 2018-19 to a full rebuild, not have a foot in every camp, take the best baseball advice, and we committed to that, and we've done it, right? I don't think we're rebuilding anymore, to Mike's thought. I'm glad we were in a full rebuild because it was what was recommended and was the right thing. It was also, we were fortunate that as the world hit a pandemic, we were stripped down to that full. That was just good luck, really. In that sense, that to not have a lot of payroll out there. Teams that had a lot of payroll and that were relying on live attendance to pay for that were in a much worse situation. We were much better situated. Just lucky, really. So was the intention to not invest during the rebuild? No. We continued to invest. As you guys know, we didn't spend much money on international free agents, and we spent the maximum every year of the rebuild, and we're going to keep doing that. If we could spend more, we would. It's capped by the league rules. We've obviously invested and signed, not only drafted, but signed all or substantially all, of our players in the domestic draft, which is what we ought to be doing. We've invested in facilities in the Dominican and here. I anticipate we're going to invest more this year, next year. And if you see all the technology here that I don't begin to understand, but that these guys say is an important part of it, and we've invested in that. We're just laying in foundational dollars for all of those things: international, domestic, technology, facilities. This facility is going to be invested in. The minor league, we're thinking about some interesting things to renew this facility, the stadium, but really this area, which is the R&D function of the team. So that's never ending. Now payroll, I think there's a range there that Mike and his team have to determine, and do I have a role in that? Really only to make sure that their recommendations are being properly funded. We're probably not going to have, nor is any other middle or small market team, the payroll of the Mets or the Dodgers or even the Red Sox or certainly the Yankees. But that's not an Oriole thing. That's a small and middle market team in this economic system. This is not football. This is not basketball. In a lot of respects, it'd be great if it were. I think, you see in those other leagues where Oklahoma City can spend at the same level as the New York Knicks playing in Madison Square Garden. We're not there yet in baseball, but we're going to make all these capital investments and stay the course, and we'll see where the payroll goes. You guys know the numbers better than I do. You've got examples like Tampa, you've got examples like Cleveland, you've got examples like Milwaukee, and they're all different payroll levels. That's for others to determine. If you're asking me if we have the resources, we absolutely have the resources. And we plan to keep moving the payroll up. But we got to keep making these long-term capital investments. We do think they're working. We do think the full rebuild was the right thing and is working. And we're going to keep investing in that R&D. So we're not only where we are today, but over the next 5 or 8 years, we can keep this going. And I think we can keep it going. Not just a 5-year cycle, hopefully a self-sustaining, more than 5 year, 5, 8, 10 year. That's the goal. And I think with the people we've recruited and brought in on the baseball in the group and in the business group, that's another thing. We have a very small staff. We're going to keep building that. You guys know, I recruited Cal Perry to join on and as the content officer. Most teams don't have that. That's an investment too in bright people. So, more good times ahead and definitely more investment.
John, when you say that Brandon is here for long, Tom, Mike, and you, does that mean that the team was going to stay in Angelos' family hands? That it's not.
Yeah, no, that's good. So there is absolutely no plan to change the partnership group or to change the managing partnership structure that we have. To the extent that other people would say, hey, I like what they're doing in Baltimore. I like that Camden Yards is going to be part of a renewed public-private partnership. with the city and the state, and I want to be part of that, well, sure. I mean, why would, that's all of the partners that my family, my father put together 30 years ago. Many, not all, some have transitioned out, but it's been a tremendous amount of continuity. But you want to have a next generation of people coming in too, and you want them to be excited, and it'd be nice if we could attract strategic people who care about Baltimore, who care about the way we're doing this now, who care about the example Camden Yards set, and want to be part of it. That's not necessary or require or requisite, but we're open to it. But there is no plan to change or to transition out of what we have today.
So to follow up on that real quick, so does that mean that if you do, bring some more people in, I mean, you obviously have enough of your family, has enough of the resources to sell 20% and still be the majority owner? Is the majority owner the thing that you guys are I guess, most focused on? I mean, obviously, if you sell some people out, you will still, the Angelos family will still be the majority.
Well, first of all, let me say everybody that's in is welcome to stay in for another 30 years, right? And that I think we're proud of that we've had continuity. We've had partners like Pam Shriver, like Barry Levinson, and others that are not as well known as the Clancy family, who have been part of this from the beginning and are still part. And my only comment about that is certainly if somebody approached, just like a media publication that you guys are part of, if somebody came in and said, I really like what you're doing and I want to be part of that, particularly if you had a synergy, if they were involved in, say, media or entertainment or music, or real estate development, you name it, why wouldn't you have that conversation? But to answer your question, Dan, yeah, I wouldn't say we're focused on any one thing, but I would say there's not a plan to change the principal ownership or the managing partnership structure that we have. And there'd really be no reason to, that I can think of. And I wouldn't want to do that. I think we want to see this through, take this public-private partnership to a whole nother place. And that's what we owe to the people that created Camden Yards. I mean, we didn't create it. I hope we've been good stewards of the facility. I think what we've done here, where we took where the Reds were here, as you guys know, the city owned part of it, the county, everybody, it was sort of we privatize that. We develop it all. If there's development, we manage it. We do all the maintenance, all the operations here. And 13 years later, not a blip. Great relationship. I get together with the commissioners that I worked with 12 years ago. I get together with the county administrator. And we've generated, you guys see the press releases, know how much time you spend on those, but it's a little bit more dry than all this. But we're proud of that. We're proud of that $94 million a year that the state and the city and the county and the Orioles say we generated. When I testified 10, 12 years ago, I said we thought we'd generate $38 or $40 million. So we underpromised and we over-delivered. We've done that in Baltimore, and I know that we're going to do it again in the next Camden Yards 2.0 with Live, Work, Play. So I want to be around for that, and I want to make sure that having spent a lot of time institutionally around this, I think that's my job. My job's not here. Other people do this. My job is how do we make that 365 Live, Work, Play? How do we make this thing a catalyst for speaking aspirationally about what Baltimore and Maryland and this Orioles, Ravens, city and state partnership can be? We can go a whole another paradigm shift, and I think we're going to. And I'm not critical to it. We're all dispensable, but I think I can play an important role in it and try to move it forward faster and hopefully effectively.
When we spoke to you last month, you offered to bring us back to the warehouse, show us the financials, show us the governments. Do you expect that meeting to take place?
Well, I knew we'd be here in Florida, so there's no warehouse to take you to. But obviously, let me say something about that. That's an old idea. First of all, it was talked about. You guys who were students of the '94 strike, one of the things that recurringly came up was, what is the industry profit in the aggregate? What do individual teams profit? Big market, small market. How do we solve this question of how is revenue being shared and profitability being shared between labor and management, let's call them, right? My father at the time called on baseball to, under Commissioner Seelig, to open the books, so to speak. In a lot of ways, what I was saying in response to Dan that day was I was going back to that time. I think there should be so much more trust, and I may be the only one. I may be naive in saying this, but there should be more trust between Players Association and teams and the league. Now, why? Because I say no, because that's how you're going to grow the pie. Baseball's 10, 11, 12 billion dollars, let's say. How's that going to be 15, 18, 20? How's that going to equal or eclipse the NFL if that's a reasonable goal? I don't know if it is or isn't. Well, it's going to be through partnership. It's not going to be through distrust. And so when I say let's open the books, and I would share with you guys an overview, which I intend to do, and I intend to do that while we're here in spring training. I am going to do what I said I would do within our conversation. I'm going to sit down with you and all of you, and can I show you to your question earlier, or someone's question, can I show you the date that Mike Elias's contract expired? I mean, no, but your editors and your publisher and your executives don't do that with your employment contracts either. That's just a standard that isn't applicable in any business. And I can't be held to that standard. I can't, but I can hold myself to a much higher standard than I think we have in the past. And I think what you're asking, what you would like to have. And I was reminded that they cut the hedges down here and it's a lot more transparent. Mike Elias told me, he told you. Yeah, it's great. You can see right across the whole place. I'm not going to be able to pull out the payrolls and show you everything financially, but I can give you a full picture for the business. I can give you certainly a picture for what our objectives are on the field, but really I want you to understand, at least my view, whether you agree with it or not, on the context of our vision off the field and in the community. I think if you don't have that part of it, you're missing a huge. You're not going to understand where I'm coming from or where the organization's trying to go, and I want you to understand that. So if it means sitting down and putting up on a whiteboard, this is the club. This is this is how it all fits together and where we're trying to go. I'll do that. So more to follow on that. Before spring training's over, I will sit down with you guys, as I said I would. And I would just say this, I said we were going to rebuild the team and we do it a certain way. And Mike and Brandon and they've done that. I mean, there's no question they've done that, right? I mean, we went from bottom of the league to top on R&D, on talent in the minor leagues. We obviously had a 31-game turnaround. Now, we all know this year who knows what will happen this year, and that's fine. But we've done what we've done. I said we would bring in major music concerts, and I did that. We did that. And when you think about it, in 19 months, if you take away COVID, we've announced three. Someone, TJ Brightman, told me that he said it's the Mount Rushmore of music, right? The Boss and Paul McCartney and Billy Joel, right? Well, that's delivering on what we said we would do. There were no concerts at Camden Yards for 25 or 30 years. For whatever reason, water over the dam, we said there would be, and now there are. And when I say something, like, well, I'm going to sit down with you guys and explain the business from my perspective, I'm going to do it. I'm not going to say it and walk away from it. I couldn't do it the next day. I couldn't, but here we are. And maybe we'll just substitute that building for the warehouse. So more to come on.
To follow up to your point about payroll, the three teams you mentioned, Milwaukee, Cleveland, and Tampa, historically have bottom half of the league payrolls. They haven't won a World Series, at least not in recent years. What does that say about what you guys are aiming for, if those are the models you're looking at?
Well, we're aiming for sustained success. And I think what you see in a place like Tampa, they have had sustained success. It's a great testament to Stuart Sternberg's leadership, his partnership group. And he's had different presidents of baseball ops, different GMs over time, and they've stayed relevant and important and competitive in a very difficult environment. Obviously, with a new ballpark, it would seem that they'd only do better, and probably their payrolls go up. But I am encouraged that Tampa's done what they've done. That's a great thing to aspire to. There is no reason why. I would again be, much like I said with the public-private partnership, I would be disappointed if we're not the next Tampa, right? Which means being sustainably competitive and relevant. We're fortunate to have a great venue, Right now, they don't have that. Hopefully they will. But I'd like to be thought of as competent and capable and professional as I think all of us view an organization like Tampa. I mean, that's an aspiration. I think we're going to get there.
So to be clear, you expect payroll to also model Tampa in a lot of ways.
No, I didn't say that. I don't expect payroll to model any particular team. I was giving you guys a range, of small and middle market teams, right? So could payroll be double or triple what it is, or could it be over 100 million? Or yeah, I mean that we're not there yet. We have a very young team that's overachieved and overperformed because of the great work of our baseball folks. It's not my job to predict payroll. My job is to make sure that the community partnerships are sustained, and I think all of it comes after that, right? First, I have to do the concerts. Then we have to do the PPP. We got the legislation passed initially, but there's more to do there. And we've got to perform as these guys are performing on the field, meaning Brandon and Mike and the team and the players. But it's not for me to sit back and project payroll. I know that you guys do, and you want me to ask, but you're asking me to look 3, 4, 5 years ahead. All those scenarios are possible. I'm simply using Milwaukee as a good example of a market that's similar to Baltimore, in the shadow of a much bigger market, Chicago versus DC. And I'm saying you certainly could see Milwaukee's been successful, good partners, owners there, good baseball people there. And they've been at a certain payroll. Cleveland and Tampa have been lesser. That doesn't mean you can't be higher. Does that answer the question? Because I'm definitely not saying it must be lower than something arbitrary.
John, when you created MASN, we were told that a regional store signing that would put you guys in a payroll area with Yankees, Red Sox, whomever. And now it's been all these years. Obviously, MASN has changed. Regional sports networks have changed. They're going a lot to streaming and everything else. What is the status of MASN now? Not just on the March 14th hearing, but just where do you see MASN? I mean, it's a situation that you guys are doing fewer games here than I think any other team in Major League Baseball from under spring trainings. So what is the status of MASN?
Yeah, let me take the last part of that first. Spring training games are often talked about, and you're right. There are networks that do greater numbers than we do.
And the Red Sox are doing 27.
They're doing some, and they're doing some digital, and they're doing some linear and digital. And the Red Sox are also the only RSN out there right now, I think, to speak of. There might be one or two others that are doing a direct-to-consumer product in an attempt to try to figure out, which they haven't. None of us have. The big media companies haven't figured out yet. Unbundling, cord cutting, cord nevers, and does direct-to-consumer work. The leagues, the NBA, the NHL, and MLB are trying to figure that out, obviously, with what's happened with Sinclair recently, or what's happening with Diamond Sports Group. Spring training games, it is a business decision, a judgment call. Doesn't mean, by the way, that I know the way we do it today is right. You make a great point. The NESN does more, right? Spring training games are relatively low-rated games, right? They're very low-rated games. Most of them are in the afternoons on weekdays. The only professional sport that's really still doing anything on afternoons and weekdays is probably horse racing, right? So, it's a tough putt. That doesn't mean you should or shouldn't do it, but it's hard to make it pay. Now, the counter argument is just spend it as a cost of doing business, right? And it'll help promote the teams, it'll help promote the game. That's a fairly reasonable argument. We have historically made the decision to focus on fewer games in the spring and pour more of our production into the course of the season. The industry is definitely in, it has headwinds. It's continued to evolve, and you're seeing the biggest media companies in the world right now, much bigger than sports, bigger than all the leagues. Right? They're doing new things. They're shoring up their situation. When you see Disney's and HBO's and other people laying people off, and all of that, that means a bigger world outside of us that we don't control. We will, I hope, do more games. We certainly, when you have two baseball teams, right there you do over 300 live events, and we do 600 live pre and post game shows. That's at or near the first or second or third RSN in the country, and has been for 15 years. I mean, nobody, except for maybe I think it was Fox Sports South, maybe a couple others, does more live events than we do. Should that come at the expense of spring training? And as I said, I don't know. I think it's certainly a valid question and criticism. Let me say something about MASN, though. MASN was created in 1997. Okay, and it was created as an entity to do what the Red Sox had done in the 80s. They were ahead of everybody with NESN. Then the Yankees did in early 2000s, and we did the year after the Yankees did it with Yes. That's what MASN was first created for. But the compensation that was provided for, which is the issue on March 15th, the compensation agreement in 2005 between Major League Baseball and the Orioles, what that agreement did was it channeled permanent compensation to the public-private partnership between Baltimore, City of Baltimore, State of Maryland, and the Orioles through the MASN vehicle. That wasn't the only way to do it. That was the way it was chosen by the parties to do it. So MASN already was a thing that owned the rights. When former Commissioner Seelig decided to move the Expos to D.C., which, if you guys remember, they bought the Expos, they resold the Expos in that case, the Learners, and they put the team 38 miles away from Camden Yards. The league agreed with the Orioles and the state of Maryland that we needed a compensation vehicle. And it was said by putting both teams' rights in that vehicle that already existed from 1997. Obviously, the team moved in 2000. The Expos moved in 2005. So 8 years later, we created the vehicle for the permanent compensation that the Orioles and the state and the city lost when Commissioner Seelig moved the Expos to D.C. That's what the resolution of the compensation, which I think is eminently solvable, and with MASN, without MASN, however you do it, revenue sharing, whatever the form of that, all we need to be sure of, if you're Brandon Scott or Wes Moore, or in my position, you have the same goal. Make sure that there is the same permanent long-term compensation to the Orioles. The Orioles are the only team that has a bilateral settlement agreement with Major League Baseball. Only team. Probably the only team in sports that has that. And because they're the only team that had a team put by the last commissioner 38 miles away. That's why we have it, and that's why the compensation was agreed to. Preserving the compensation is existential to the city, the state, and the Orioles. And I think it's existential to Major League Baseball. I mean, as Rob Manfred has said, and he and I have a really good relationship, the Orioles will always be in Baltimore. He's right. I agree with him. I said it before he did, but that's because we've talked about it together. The Orioles are always going to be in Baltimore. But these mechanisms that balance the ability of franchises to compete, and we are in a category of one. We're the only ones to have had that happen. Rob inherited that. I inherited that. Okay, let's just preserve the vehicles that we have, and this franchise will hopefully be doing what it did last year and better for many years to come. And that's my only goal. And my job's done. Check a few more boxes, and that's it. We renew the public-private partnership, and that's it. There's nothing more to do at that point.
And after that hearing, in the next month or two,
I'll about that. I mean, this thing's been going on. As I said, Commissioner Manfred and I inherited it. It was something that was carved out in the late 90s, early 2000s, because you were around covering it when the dialogue was going on about baseball, DC, what to do with expansion teams. It was a much broader issue that it's been going on for 15 years. The litigation for a lesser part of that, but a long time, I think it's resolvable today, tomorrow, oversimplifying, with separate and apart from that appellate track, right? And that's litigation, and it's my goal. I'd be totally surprised to hear just to never be around any litigation again. You don't need litigation to solve problems. You just need good partners, and we could sort that out and solve it very quickly. Before that, after that, to your point, I think that's all possible.
With the thoughts of basic, the state period access to $600 billion public funds, Bob just mentioned revitalization project. Can you share any specifics on what you got planned that?
So, and I drive the staff crazy about this. So this is the way I think of it, for what it's worth, with the reformulation and renewal of the public-private partnership, a subpart, which maybe one of 4 or 5 pillars of which is what I would call the facility use agreement for the lease. All the lease guys, what the Ravens and the Stadium Authority did recently, that's really just who manages the facility, where people park. It's a lot of nuts and bolts and sort of that's just a piece. The bigger question is, how does the transportation work? How does the crime and security mechanisms work? Smart city and technology, co-tourism. We are able to promote the state of Maryland and the city throughout the Mid-Atlantic. We want it to happen. That's what's in this agreement. For a dozen or more years, we've been promoting visitorship well, we should be doing that for Baltimore. Yeah, and then the facility use agreement, or the lease, is a part of that. I lost that question and tried it.
Just what specifically do you have taken in for the $600 million?
Oh, well, nothing now. I mean, I think nothing's. Well, let me step back. Those numbers were arrived at through a relatively early and somewhat overview, a survey by the Stadium Authority, the Orioles, and the Ravens. What does it feel like? What is the amount of money that each stadium or ballpark needs to be brought back up to standard? I think there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes, boilers and air conditioning and all kinds of stuff that none of us will ever, well, maybe some of us will see, but nobody else, none of the fans will. And they won't see it when it's old, and they won't see it when it's replaced. It's just table stakes. You've got to put 100, 150, whatever it is, 200 million into the Ravens and Orioles physical plant to make it work. What do you do with the rest? I mean, the things you see around the league, amenities, improved seating areas, possibly injection into the work play, but it's probably needed for the 2 venues. Audio video systems. You've had 2 scoreboards, 2 audio visual systems in the history of Camden Yards. The first one was done in 92 or 91 when the stadium was open. It wasn't actually probably bleeding edge technology from what the experts say then. And then it was replaced in 08 or 09. Or yeah. That's 15 years ago. So now those kinds of things really aren't capital improvements. They're really just O&M, or they're capital replenishments to bring things back up to standard. But that scoreboard is a dozen years old. It's got to be replaced. It's not really an option. I mean, I'd like to actually say, leave it the way it is, right? But eventually you just lose, the technology burns out, the parts go away, and you have to do these things. So there'll be things like that. And then there will be kind of nice to haves that are also contemplated in, say, X $100 million of that. But no, we're not down to that specific level. It was a needs analysis, just as to the 2 facilities. Doesn't address, hey, what can we do for the live-work play on the 35 or 40 acres of asphalt, with or without replacement of parking and all those details. That's going to take, I don't think it takes time. I think it takes an umbrella memorandum of understanding that I still think can be signed in the period I mentioned. And it lays out a roadmap to renovate each ballpark and then do the 365 live, work, play development, which will obviously take several years to do, many years to do. But you create the framework, and then you have rules of the road, and you move forward with really what others have accomplished in Atlanta, a little bit in Detroit, whatever they're trying to do in Texas with the Cowboys, etc. But I think Atlanta is the best example of what's possible if you can do it. And I think that's what we all aspire to do. I think the state does. I know the mayor does. Can really make a statement for why Baltimore is back, and why it's going to be a big part of the future of the country, and thought of as a can-do way instead of in some of the ways it's been thought of from past.
One of the renovations that was made through you is the left field wall and pushing it back. What was the sales pitch to you on that, and how leery were you on going ahead and changing what this had become an iconic ball club?
Yeah. If you know, I don't know how. I'll say it this. I didn't put the management team together. I'm not going to add to the management team with a thought that I know best and you have to sell me on side, right? I mean, it really is their department. Now, yes, there are all kinds of considerations. The iconic nature of the ballpark, the aesthetics. Get enough people in a room, I'm sure we all have a different opinion on that, right? But I really felt like that was based on the belief by the baseball folks that it would help us with our long-term competitiveness and relevance. And that's really, unless I thought that was per se invalid, which I did, it really didn't require me to do much of anything. And they said it was going to work. There's a presumption by me that they're smart, bright, reasonable people who want to win. And why would they want to do it? I thought it was just something that the company just pre-authorized and would go with, you know. And also, you know, Dan, let's say it didn't work out. Let's say in any number of ways, sometimes the best laid plans, well, then you'd have to change it. And that'd be unfortunate because X million, but you can't be afraid to let your best people make decisions in the field. So I wouldn't, you know, I was aware of it, but I wasn't an activist, you know, kind of in trying to figure it out for myself. They're figuring it out, and you know, it has made an impact, you know, and I think that's how we roll. That's how we operate. You know, I'm not here to pass on anything going on here any more than maybe you. Well, you guys actually are more standing more judgment than I do in some ways. Yeah, I'm heavily invested. I want it to turn out well. I tell you the truth, I'm more like if I see a rusted out trash can, I want to make sure we throw it away, you know. And if I'm into that, we're in trouble, you know. I rely on them, and I think they're doing a great job so far. That's it.